Google has provided a number of resources to help while developing web pages using the Google Maps JavaScript API. In this lesson, we will discuss some of the main reference materials that are useful during the development process. Let's start out with the API reference. The API reference allows you to examine the classes, methods, events, and properties that are available for use. All of the lessons in this course make use of the features that are documented in the API reference. I'd recommend as you go through this course that you have the API reference open and refer to it as you go through the lesson code. That way you'll know which section to refer to later for additional details or clarification. As we browse through the reference, let's take a look at a couple different things. First of all, as you load up, you'll see over here in the sidebar that you can actually select the different versions of the reference. Right now we're looking at the release stable version, which is 3.18. But you can take a look at the reference manual for the experimental and also the frozen code here. In the release version, we have a note here that tells you the current release version and when it was released. This is useful if you want to use the fixed version. You can specify this number instead of the stable release. And it also tells you when the version was released. So if a new version is released and you're having issues, you can go back and figure out what's going on. So let's take a look at one example of a class. Let's look at the map class. So as you click on the different classes, they're all linked, which is nice. So you can follow along, and if there's a class or a method that you don't know about, you can just click on it. So the map class is the main class where we instantiate the map. It creates a new map. And the details about it in the reference talk about the constructor. It tells you what you need to pass in as parameters. Here it tells you need to pass in the map div and also the map options that you want to set up. When you access the API, you will use the namespace google.maps. So for example, when you instantiate the map object, you will call google.maps.map and then pass in the required parameter. Let's take a look at some of the methods that are available for use with the map class. You can see in the list here and under methods they define the methods, the return value, and a description. And these are useful for understanding each of the methods and what's returned, what's passed into the method. As we go through the methods, let's take a look at some of them. GetCenter is a very useful method. It returns the center point of the map. You can get the boundary of the map. As we scroll through here, let's take a look at some other ones. GetZoom is useful to get the current zoom. We'll talk about these methods as we go through the course, and you'll see some examples in the code. So along with getting, there's setter methods where you can set the center. You can set options on the map, set the zoom. Along with the methods, there's also properties that you can set and events. Events are configured so when the bounds change, for example, an event is fired, and you can attach a handler to that event. So mouse movements, the boundaries change, the center change, the map's been dragged, all these things you can set event handlers on. So again, the API reference is a very useful document. You'll be using it throughout your development, and you can refer to it and see what has been changed or get information about the methods and classes that are in use in the API. Google provides code samples for a number of the API features. These samples are helpful to provide you with a starting point when you're investigating how a new feature works. Oftentimes, the samples help put the reference documentation into context to make the implementation clear to you. Let's take a look at some of the code samples. Here in the sidebar menu on the left, you can see that when you click on code samples, you get a listing of the samples grouped for quick reference. There are a lot of simple examples that demonstrate how to implement a certain feature. It is useful after looking at the API reference to refer to these examples to gain a more thorough understanding of a particular class. Let's take a look at the examples and go through the different groups and what they implement. We'll start off by taking a look at a simple map. When this example is loaded, you'll see that Google's provided a sample map of the demonstrated feature. You can look at a full screen version of the map. From the full screen, you can look at all the code. But they've also provided the JavaScript, implementation, and then you can look at the JavaScript plus HTML. So it'll show you the full implementation of how to put together a simple map. If we look at some of the other groups here, you can see the signed-in maps. So this is if the user is signed in with a Google account, you can take advantage of that. Handling click events, and listen to DOM events. You can interact with the controls of the map, the pan, zoom, create custom controls. There's a section on styling the maps. And then drawing on the maps has a lot of different examples, simple markers, creating animations, info windows, polylines, creating shapes such as circles, rectangles, adding custom overlays. There's a lot of things. So here's some layer information, adding KML, simple data layers, creating heat maps, fusion tables. Their map types. Talk about image map types, overlays, image rotation, the different services offered, geocoding, directions, the street view information, the different libraries. And these are the libraries we talked about before in the previous section. There's a lot of good examples here, and these lessons will go over a lot of these different things so you can gain a better understanding of them. Google provides some showcase examples which are really useful to see what others are doing with the map and to get some inspiration for your own project. So if you take a look, you can go through, they have different sections here. You can look at what people are doing on mobile. There's a travel websites, fitness, store locator. I encourage you to take a look at these examples and implementations to learn how others are utilizing Google Maps and to get some inspiration for your own projects. Google used to maintain their own forums, but has since migrated everything over to Stack Overflow. In Stack Overflow, you can search for answers or post your own questions on the Google Maps API using the tag Google-Maps-API-3. From the issue tracker, you can browse and file bug and feature request. You can also read the changelog. If you spot a bug in the API or are having problems, this is a good place to start. As new versions of the API are released, it is helpful to refer to the changelog. The changelog will highlight bug fixes and new features as they are being released. Based on the changelog, you can set the version of the API that you are interested in using. You also see as features get moved from the experimental channel over to the stable release. Also in the changelog, you can browse issues that were fixed in different versions and the dates that they were fixed. In this lesson, you learned where to find the API reference documentation, code samples, how to get development support, and to check on the latest API updates.